All right, we're going to start part 2 here now of the podcast. Again, That's and Cheese, Vendetta Sports Media. We have Jarrod Prosser here, myself, Trey Daubert. Going to dive into the Lakers-Rockets series. This one hasn't started yet. Somehow the Eastern Conference is, like 1,000 games ahead. Does Houston have any chance here?
Yes. Probably not as much as I thought before round one, anticipating that this would be the series. And the reason I don't think they've got quite as much hope is that the Lakers are shooting the eyes out of the ball. That first game, the one they lost to Portland, they shot 5 for 16 from three. Since then, they've shot about 38, 39% in the subsequent games. If LA can continue to shoot like that, then Houston has no chance. Even if LA do cool off a bit, I still think LA are quite clearly the favourites. They're the best team in the Western Conference for a reason, or record-wise at least. But the thing that gives me a little bit of hope for Houston is, do you remember that first game after the Capella trade? They absolutely tore the Lakers a new arsehole. The Lakers had no idea how to deal with all these guards running around.
They were a lot more athletic, and you could just see it. And guys like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who need to defend well, just looked lost. JaVale McGee looked lost. So I do think Houston somehow has a chance, but again, it goes back to they need good Russell Westbrook.
Yes. Catch up on part 1 of this podcast for a 20-minute rant that we did on Westbrook. If they have the best version of Westbrook, the big thing will be how does Vogel align his team? In that first game after the Capella trade, and I might have my minutes wrong here, but I think McGee played 16 or 18 minutes and Dwight Howard played 4. They went with a lot of AD at the 5 and a little bit of Kuzma at the 5 even. And that's the sort of thing they need to do. If they try and match Houston essentially, like for like, they've got the talent to be able to beat them. Avery Bradley missing hurts because he's a natural matchup for Harden. But KCP can do, if KCP's playing well, he can do just enough. If Danny Green has enough juice in his aging legs, he can do just enough to hold up Harden and allow, ultimately LeBron's a 5 in this series. He's not even a 4, he's a 5 against Houston. But you've got AD and LeBron at the rim. All of a sudden, Harden is going to find it tough to finish if the defender at the point of attack can hold him up for a split second.
So you mean you don't trust Dwight Howard to stay on the floor?
I don't think Dwight Howard will see 30 minutes in this entire series. I really don't. And I've been a fan of Dwight for a long time. Like, he's a bit of a dill. I understand that, but I loved his game. And I love the fact that he's had this Indian summer this season. But yeah, if he's on the floor for more than 5 minutes a game in this series, then
there's a problem.
Vogel, there's either an injury or Vogel is like trying to get fired.
This is literally the only series I have no interest, just because I hope both teams lose. Like I can't win. I can't win here. I just want somebody to lose.
Look, I got to admit, I'm barracking for Houston in this series. I know I'm an old-fashioned point guard myself. I love the flow of the beautiful game. Those Spurs teams from a few years ago, the old Utah Jerry Sloan era teams. Houston is not that, but I have a very deep appreciation for what we've got Westbrook on the mind now, for what James Harden can do at the offensive end of the floor. And my eldest son is a huge, huge Rockets fan. So, I want them to be in it for him. I've got no tie to the Lakers whatsoever. So I don't think Houston will win it, but I kind of hope they do.
If Houston loses, does Mike D'Antoni and Daryl Morey get fired?
I think short of winning a championship, they get fired, really. I honestly don't think they can. I think Morey is probably just over it. He's had such good ownership through his era there, and now Fertitta has come in, and it's just not the same. He's not getting the support financially. He's not getting the support with the decision making. And I think if one goes, the other goes. And I honestly think that D'Antoni, even if Morey stays, would go anyway. I really think, a run to the finals might be the thing that keep them there. But aside from that, I have a feeling that we're going to have some sweeping changes in the Houston front office.
If I had a magic potion or whatever to get inside the Rockets front office when they made the Westbrook trade, I want to know if it was Harden driven, Daryl Morey driven, or the ownership driven.
I think it was probably Chris Paul driven. And not so much Chris Paul saying, get me out of here. It's just Chris Paul being a bit of an asshole. He's just not an easy guy to get along with after a few years. So, and as he goes from a younger man to a middle-aged man, I can imagine him getting more cantankerous. So there's probably elements of all of that, but I think we have to put a little bit of that at Chris Paul as well, both in his behavior and probably just being a little bit over James Harden as well. Because Harden's a different cat. He's not somebody who lives and breathes the game like a lot of players do.
I thought you were going to say strip club.
Yeah, it was my polite way of saying he has other interests. He has interests outside the sport. I think there's a few factors in it, but I don't think we can overlook the fact that Chris Paul just didn't want to be there anymore either. And Westbrook and Harden get along famously. So after the whole Dwight Howard affair, after Chris Paul, not being quite on the same page with Harden, I think they went for the personality matches as much as anything and figured, well, we'll sort the basketball stuff out later. At least we keep James happy. And there's a logic to that. There's also a logic to putting a good basketball team together because ultimately, they're a basketball club.
I'm probably going to go Lakers in 6 here. What do you have?
That sounds about right. Just to keep it different, I'll go Lakers in 7.
So Miami Heat, Milwaukee Bucks. You have been very high on Milwaukee. I've been high-ish on Milwaukee. I thought they were vulnerable. I didn't see this coming, so technically I'm still wrong. But
I
what
think
the hell's going on here?
Oh, look, Milwaukee are an excellent team, but if there's a team that's created in a laboratory to defeat this version of Milwaukee, it's the Miami Heat. And it's from the very top down. We mentioned in part 1 how we spoke about a particular coach that doesn't have, he's a very, very good coach, but he doesn't have the ability to conjure magic. That's Mike Budenholzer. He's got this wonderful game plan, but if plan A doesn't work, he just stands there looking kind of dumbfounded.
They have no change up.
No, absolutely. Whereas Eric Spoelstra is absolutely brilliant. He creates a good game plan. He puts in wonderful principles, great discipline, but he can change on the fly. And then just you look at the makeup of the teams. We spoke about laboratory-built teams. If there's a laboratory-built player to guard Giannis, it's Bam Adebayo. The man he's just perfect for playing Giannis. If you look at what made the Bucks so good this year, it's that defense. It's that legendary, all-time great defense. And the way they play defense is they figure the most efficient shot is the one at the rim. So we're taking that away from you. And we will live with the kick-out pass of the three-pointer because we're going to trust our speed and our length to contest that shot, to block that shot, or to deflect the pass, to make that pass a bit slower. Miami take the third least amount of points in the paint in the entire league through this season. They're 28th out of 30 in points in the paint. They are a team that make threes. So what Milwaukee are taking away is the one thing that Miami don't do. And what Milwaukee allow is the one thing that Miami do better than most teams, and that's shoot threes. So if there is a team that is made to beat Milwaukee, it's this team. Having said that, that game too, my God, we spoke about the refs we touched upon the refs in part 1. The call at the end of the game for Butler's free throws was slightly worse than a call for Middleton's free throws to tie it up. Both of those, and good on Doris Burke for calling it out. When Steve Javie came out and said, when they crossed to Steve Javie, said, "Oh no, I think that's the right call." He always backs the referees in blindly. And they cut back to Doris Burke, and she's gone, no, not copping that shit. These are terrible calls. Doris Burke's a star, man. I love her.
Yeah, I like watching her broadcast too. But
Mm.
to me, I've had two takeaways, and you've kind of mentioned this, but it's like they are the perfect Nolan Ryan. If you can hit the 100-mile-an-hour fastball, you can beat Milwaukee.
Yep.
And the other thing is, I just keep thinking about this. Like, remember that time LeBron wanted Eric Spoelstra fired?
Well, Spoelstra wasn't as good a coach then. Like, he was still a really good coach, and LeBron was trying to power play it, I suppose. But he came
It's
around.
really funny now, though.
Oh, Spo's a wonderful coach. But remember, Rick Carlisle's one of the best X's and O's coaches in the league, and he's been fired twice, I think, hasn't he? Indiana and Detroit.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's just getting the right coach at the right time with the right squad. Frank Vogel was absolutely awful down in Orlando, but he's been a really good coach for the Lakers, and he was excellent in Indiana. I think that was probably more LeBron than than anything, just trying to flex his muscle, just discovering the power that he had. We mentioned Bam. Going back to the games, we mentioned Bam, but let's say they managed to pull him off a double screen or a flare screen, and they managed to get Giannis onto someone else. He's still kind of screwed. He's still got Jay Crowder. He's got Jimmy Butler. He might have size, Olynyk or Leonard against him. Who else? They can throw Iggy at him, and Iggy can do a reasonable job. Even Duncan Robinson, he's not quick, but he's still 6'8". He's not small. This team has got Derrick Jones Jr. There's another one who's an outstanding defender. They've got all these guys that no matter who Giannis tries to go up against, he's got a challenge. And it's this sort of series where we see Giannis's big kryptonite, and that's his reading of the game. Defensively, he's a wonderful player, but offensively, you can see that he hasn't had the upbringing in the game that a lot of guys have had. And not just guys in America, guys in Europe as well, who've been playing with a Real Madrid or a Panathinaikos or a CSKA Moscow since they were 12. He's someone who's come to the game late and played at lower levels. And you can see that he doesn't quite have that really quick reading of the game that a lot of guys have. So the complexity of the defense that Miami throw at him, it still throws him around a little bit, and he's not able to make those passes as quick as he can against lesser teams.
They also could be a little more creative with him instead of him just punching his head against the wall. And they've built the wall brilliantly, but it's just over and over and over again.
That brings it back full circle beautifully. Budenholzer, wonderful game plan, but he's not able to create stuff on the fly. He's not able to call a timeout and say, right, what we've got here isn't working. So instead of doing this, this curl cut off a flare screen, let's do a cross screen and we'll try and match someone up here. There's one thing I think Milwaukee could try. Bam is almost exclusively guarding Giannis. And now that they're not starting Myers Leonard, they're starting Jay Crowder instead for the three-point shooting.
Smart call.
And look, Crowder's as strong as an ox, but Brook Lopez is only shooting threes in this series. He was an all-star as a low-post center. Mm-hmm. Try something different. It might not work. Like, I'm not saying that this will work, but try something different. Clear out a little bit. See if Lopez can take, whether it's Duncan Robinson or Jay Crowder or Derrick Jones Jr., see if he can take them down low, shove his huge backside into them, and get a few little turnarounds.
Eric Bledsoe needs to be better too.
Yeah, but we say that every playoff, so it's almost expected now. He was pretty good in that last game, though. They
were more competitive when he was on the floor compared to game one.
Yeah, and I think Bledsoe, we sort of joke about him not being a playoff performer, but it's really just his shooting that seems to go away, and he's never been a dead-eye shot. He still runs an offense reasonably well, and his defense is always excellent, even in the playoffs. It's just that shooting that seems to go at the worst possible times. But, we've seen that happen to better players than him. James Harden, for one.
Yeah. How about, I keep thinking about this too. Jimmy Butler, people thought he was crazy for going to Miami, I am included. They're like way better than anybody ever could have thought before the year.
Oh, no, I loved his move to Miami from the get-go. Do you remember, I don't know whether you remember
I just didn't see Bam being this good. Duncan Robinson, I mean, this is insane.
No one saw Duncan Robinson. Didn't see Duncan Robinson being this good.
Tyler Hero's good right away. Like,
yeah,
all of their young guys have hit.
Dragic has found a fountain of youth somewhere in Disney World. Do you remember a story back when Butler was in Chicago? It would have been the year he really broke out, 2000 and I want to say 2014, but would have been that first year that he really broke out as a star player. There was a story that came out that Butler literally had the side mirrors taken off his car, which is like completely illegal. Like it makes his car unroadworthy. But he did it because, and I quote, "I never look back." Like it's such a wankish thing to say for a start. And it's extremely Jimmy Butler to say it, but it's exactly the sort of thing that flies in Miami, that flies in Pat Riley's Miami, where it is, it's all work, it's all about the game, it's all about the team, and everything else is secondary. We talked about Harden having his other interests. There is no other interest than what is on the court in Miami, and that is tailor-made for Jimmy Butler. I loved that he moved there. I thought, this is a man who has found his home. He found that with Thibodeau, but he's found it in Miami, but also with a coach who actually runs a modern NBA offense. This was the perfect move for him. I didn't see the team being as good as they are, but just purely for Jimmy Butler, I thought, no, I love this move. This is a great move for him.
At this point, you almost have to take Miami to win the series.
2-0, yeah. I mean, look, we've just witnessed, and we'll get to this one, but we've just witnessed Toronto pull a game out of the fire, which would have effectively eliminated them. So, if they get 2-0 is not a death sentence. 3-0 just about is. There's no home court, so it's not like we're going back to Miami for game 3. So they're still in it. And Milwaukee are good enough to get themselves back to 2-2, and then it's anyone's game. But yeah, I mean, if you ran statistical modeling on it, you'd say 65-70% of the time Miami would win this series now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. But the one thing is, it is still make or miss. And if Miami do happen to go cold, and they've got enough shooters that they should be able to cover one or two shooters going cold, then they're barely playing Kendrick Nunn, who just finished second in Rookie of the Year. If they do happen to go cold as a team, Milwaukee will absolutely destroy them. It'll be a 35-point game. But it's going to take a lot for Milwaukee to get back in this series. And I as much as I like Miami in this series, I honestly didn't think we'd be sitting here at 2-0 to Miami.
2 more series to cover here. I wanted to bring this up one first because I don't have basically anything here other than the fact that I think the Clippers are just going to smoke the Nuggets. I think it's going to be over in 4 or 5, and I really don't have anything.
There were 2 things that I thought about in this series, and one of it was late in the series, that the Clippers will be gearing up for the Lakers and whoever they face in the East. Everything that the Clippers will do is tapering up for that conference final series expected to be against the Lakers. So you would expect late in the series, the Clippers will be primed. They will be at 100%. And then you'd say, well, the obvious flip side of that is that Denver might be able to steal a game or 2. But they've just come off a highly emotional and long and physical and draining series against Utah. They're going to need a game or 2 to get themselves back into the swing of things as well.
That's not going to happen with the Clippers.
Well, exactly. And that's what we saw in game 1, that we saw a drained Denver team, really. They just weren't there. The only guy that was really up for that game was their veteran in Millsap. And a 35-year-old Paul Millsap is only going to take you so far. Yeah,
I think it's 4 or 5 game, and that's it. And it may be 4 unless the Clippers get bored.
You took the words out of my mouth. The only way this goes 5 is if the Clippers give them a game.
Yeah. I have nothing on it.
And I hate to say it, look, at the start of this season, I picked Denver to finish second in the West. I'm really, really high on this Denver team, and even higher now that Michael Porter Jr. is in the rotation and actually playing defense. That's one of the, going back to the Utah series, that's one of the things that swung the series, not just Gary Harris's defense, the fact that Porter was able to go out there and not get eaten alive. But in this series, it doesn't matter what defense Porter will play. You look at the defense of the Clippers, Zubac is a really good young defensive center. He will be able to slow down Jokic. You stick Paul George onto Jamal Murray and it's over. You put Kawhi onto Michael Porter Jr. and Michael Porter Jr. might run off the court in tears. Kawhi will absolutely, he will drain the blood out of the poor kid. There is no way that Denver wins more than one game in this series.
Right. Last but not least here, I just suffered the heart-crushing loss last night. Still lead 2-1 Celtics Raptors. I think about this all the time, and you've bugged me for being a little optimistic, which is fine. But I just keep thinking about this. Who's got a better third guy of all the teams in the playoffs than Kemba Walker?
Yeah, I worried about Kemba's knee, but
Right.
To be honest, the way Kemba's playing, he's not your third guy. Jalen's your third guy.
Okay, who has a third guy?
But that's the thing. That makes it even better. And look, Toronto, yes, they finished second, but anybody, who would have picked Toronto to finish second in the East at the start of this season with the losses they had and the lack of additions that they had?
I'm pretty sure they were the 7th highest for over-unders for the East.
Yeah, and that's probably about right. Most people would have picked them in that 5th to 7th range. So for them to finish second and to, let's say, make it a 6-game series against Boston, to lose in the second round, forget the record. Just if you said to someone at the start of this season that Toronto would lose in the second round in 6 games to Boston, you probably would say, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. It's a good season, but they were never going to defend, and they defended the title as admirably as they could. So ultimately, them losing to Boston, no matter what happens here, it's not really a shame on Toronto because they've done more than what anybody would have thought. Boston, though, with a healthy Kemba, and assuming you get Hayward back as your 4th stringer, that's a dangerous, dangerous team. That is a really dangerous team. That pass.
Somebody's starting to buy in here. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, no, I've always liked Boston. I just sort of play. Yeah, I just can't like him as much as you do. It's almost like the Westbrook thing. I agree with you on Westbrook, just not to the same level. That pass from Kemba to Tice for the apparent game winner, that was gorgeous. That was absolutely gorgeous. To have the wherewithal to do that with essentially 1.5 seconds left. That was just a wonderful, wonderful play. And good on Tice for being good enough this season to be out there for the last offensive play in a playoff game. Nobody would have picked that at the start of the year either.
I'm not going to be able to sleep until Game 4 tips off. Unbelievable.
Just speaking of OG's shot though, I love the whole he shot it, he didn't react. I just thought it was that sort of fake tough guy thing. Did you see his interviews after the game?
I did not. I turned it right off.
I should have expected that, actually.
Yeah.
He was questioned about why he didn't react, and I love this answer. And he said, "Well, I didn't shoot it expecting to miss." I thought that's excellent. That is excellent. That's the confidence you want. If you're taking the shot, it's not like, oh, geez, I hope this goes in. It's like, no, I'm here in the last possession. If I'm open, I'm shooting it, I'm making it. That's the sort of confidence you love in a young supporting player.
I'm ready for my article to get published. I already have it written about how Richard Jefferson needs to apologize to Jaylen Brown for saying Pascal Siakam's better.
I'd imagine you've probably got like a whole list of files of people who've dissed the Boston Celtics in the last 12 months. We're going to see on Vendetta's NBA page like about 35 different posts, all from Trey Daubert, all about this person needs to apologize and this person needs to apologize.
I just couldn't believe that he said Pascal Siakam's better than Jaylen Brown. And Siakam's a good player, but I mean, come on here.
Look, if you swap them over, it would be interesting. it would really be interesting because they're both excellent defensive players. But Brown has the luxury, I suppose, of having Tatum and Kemba to be able to do a lot of the first choice offensive heavy lifting for him. Whereas Siakam doesn't have that luxury. It'd be a really interesting trading places experiment.
I would not trade
to see how they would go. Oh, I know you wouldn't, but you've got a horse in the race. You know, I don't support either team. I think it'd be a really, really good experiment to see.
I just don't think he's
Brown
nearly
would go
as
on that team.
I don't think he's nearly as athletic. He can't shoot it like Brown, and it feels like he needs to be a small ball 5.
I disagree. I disagree. Here we go. Late in the pod, we're going to get a good argument out of this.
Right.
A lot of Brown's threes, like Brown and this season in particular, he's made a lot more off the dribble.
He's been
threes.
very efficient.
Oh, he has, and like startlingly for the considering the rest of his career. But he is, again, he doesn't have the best defender on him. Tatum's always going to get the best wing defender. Siakam is going to get the best defender full stop. Now, he is the main offensive player on that team. He doesn't have the luxury of saying, well, I've got a bad matchup, I'm going to pass it to player X. Like, he's not going to give it to Norman Powell and say, hey, Norm, go do something. Whereas Jaylen Brown can sit there and say, all right, well, I've got a really bad matchup because of a cross screen or a switch or something. I'm going to give it to Tatum. I'm going to give it to Kemba. I'm going to give it to Walker. Even Marcus Smart, who's got a little bit of that Westbrook, I'm the best player on the floor no matter what, to him. Yeah, he's got guys around him who can take a little bit of that pressure off, and he can pick his moments a little more. And to Brown's credit, he does that really well. He doesn't force the action, which is why I think his efficiency is so good this season. He's learnt how to, I guess, fit into the seams of the offense without being a major piece of it. Siakam doesn't have that luxury. He's got to be the main guy every single night for the Raptors.
I've just seen Jaylen Brown guard Pascal Siakam this series, and it hasn't gone that well. So far in three games, he's shooting 37%, 18% from 3. I just don't think he's nearly the pure shooter or pure scorer that – and Brown's is mostly athleticism, but I don't think he could just, take a dribble half court, boom, go.
Yeah, Siakam is miscast as the leading man on a contender. But my argument would be that Brown, if he was in that situation, would be miscast as the leading man on a contender.
Who do you think's better? So you actually think it's close?
I think it's really close. I think it's really, really close. I'd need to go into this a bit more forensically to check it out. I think that might be an idea for a story. I think it's a very, very close thing. I just think they're in very different situations where one has to be the man and one doesn't have to be the man. I couldn't give you an answer, to be honest, straight. I'm not sure which one of them's better. I think it's that close.
Okay. All right.
I think 5 in the morning.
I think so far it's been, and at least in the playoff series, it's been pretty, and again, Pascal's the main guy, but he has not been good in the 3-game series. No,
he hasn't. And that's where I mean that he's miscast. You get to the conference semifinals. This is the top 8 teams in the league, the top 4 in your conference. This is where if you are not a proper number 1 option star, you get found out. And Siakam is getting found out. And it's not anything against Pascal Siakam. He's a wonderful basketballer. He's just...
I don't have anything against him either. I just don't think he's Jaylen Brown.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think either of them are genuine number 1 options. They're both miscast if they're put in that role. Brown is probably underutilized as effectively a 3rd option.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
I do think his ceiling is Jimmy Butler. I think he's gonna get there. He's still very, very young.
Butler's an interesting one. Look, hopefully he shoots better than Jimmy.
I think he already can shoot better than Jimmy.
Young. Well, yeah, he does. Look, I think the best role for both of them, and we saw the best role for Siakam last year, and that was being the number 2 to a genuine superstar in Kawhi Leonard. And we're not seeing the best of Jaylen Brown at the moment. We're seeing a very good version, But the best of Jaylen Brown will probably happen in about 2 years as Kemba starts to age and he becomes a genuine second option to Tatum.
I think he's also been very, very good defensively too.
Oh, since his second year in the league, he's an outstanding defender. That's pretty much what got him drafted third, is that defensive ability and the potential of offense.
I'm still very, I wouldn't say, like guaranteed lock sweep, but I'm pretty confident that the Celtics will finish this off here.
Look, given they've won the first 2 games, going into this series, I would have said Boston in 6 or 7. I'll say Boston in 5 or 6 now. So,
honestly, he's starting to buy in.
I think Boston are better than Toronto. And okay. I think Toronto have overachieved. And a lot of that comes down to Nick Nurse. A lot of it comes down to Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. But a lot of it comes down to Siakam stepping into Kawhi's shoes. But you get to this stage of the season, and if you are not a genuine number 1 option, people will figure that out pretty quickly. And Boston have shown that Siakam is not yet a number 1 option.
There just would have been a little extra pep in my step here if, OG didn't hit that last second shot.
Oh, man. We've talked about the finish to Utah, Denver, and how the finish to OKC, Houston superseded that. This one almost superseded it again. Or, Miami and Milwaukee probably superseded. We've had some bonkers finishes in the last 4 or 5 days. It's almost like one of those NBA "you're drunk, go home" moments. Like every time we see one outlandish finish, there's another even more outlandish finish the next day. It's been magnificent.
I'm ready for the series to be over because I can't watch Kyle Lowry cry anymore. He is outrageous. It's. But
you're prepared to watch Marcus Smart. You're prepared to watch Marcus Smart flop.
Yes.
In the period we've been doing this conversation about this series, Marcus Smart fell over randomly 4 times.
But I never feel like he goes to the ref and he like, oh my God, like my eye got taken out or something. He flops, but.
Oh yeah, but that's the reason he doesn't go, because he knows if he goes to the refs, those flops won't get called.
Right.
Smart knows what he's doing. He's smart by name, smart by nature.
All right, Jarrod, I think this was fun. Do we have anything else here? I just think the flagrant fouls are out of control here. That's the only thing.
It's
That's the only other thing I got.
To bring it back to Australian basketball for a little bit, a constant criticism I've had of NBL referees is that they ref the game too soft. They don't let enough physicality into the game. There's so much ticky touch stuff that gets called in the NBL.
Drives me nuts.
Oh yeah, and you get a lot of calls where it's a good hard foul. You might be going through the back of somebody who's got a layup off a back cut. It's not a flagrant foul. You're playing the ball, but you are making sure. And this is what I got taught as a junior in the 1980s. Don't let someone get a layup. Make them shoot free throws. A layup's 2 points and it's an easy shot. Making 2 free throws.
There's a right and a wrong way to do it, but the right way doesn't need to be called.
A hard foul is not necessarily a flagrant foul.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of hard fouls called as flagrant fouls, and it doesn't need to happen. These are 6'10" physical specimens. These are the best athletes in the world. They're not going to get hurt.
The one on Tice who was just trying to get around a screen, that was called on Lowry. I don't know if you saw that one. That drove me insane.
And look, I didn't even think Lowry flopped that hard on it. It was just a crap call. It was just a really bad call. And you do see a lot in basketball, the little guy and the big guy end up clashing, and the little guy is always going to come off worse. So the big guy gets the foul called on him. This wasn't even something where they really went into it that physically. This was almost like a ref was waiting for something to happen and anticipated more than what actually happened.
Yeah.
And it was disappointing. And to see all these flagrant fouls, it's stopping the game so much. And then it compounds with all the replays that we're getting. It was a Houston OKC game where the last 2.5 minutes took 13 or 14 minutes to play. It was like watching that Star Wars movie where they all sat around talking in the Senate. It was I want to see lightsabers. I don't want to see people talking in the Senate. I want exciting stuff. I want basketball. And yeah, it was really frustrating. You know the solution, Trey? Judge Judy. Get Judge Judy to be on the replay screen. Get her in the replay center in Secaucus.
I'm for it.
Mate, that would look, even if it didn't take any time off the replays, it would just be a hell of a lot more fun. So there we go. Judge Judith Steinman. The rulings are real. The cases are real. The NBA players have to go with it.
And with that, I think it's a good place to close.
And I'm going to get another wine.
Yeah. Jarrod, thank you. Great podcast as always. We will
thank you, Trey.
Hopefully do another one before the finals or whatever, or semifinals.
We will.
Whatever. Yeah. We'll figure it out.
It's always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
This is That's Some Cheese, brought to you by VendettaSportsMedia.com. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and we will see you next time.